Shabbat Shalom. Poor Moses. I feel like when we read through the opening sections of Parashat Devarim, that you can just see him shaking his fist in frustration. He would have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for those meddling Israelites. He would have gotten into the land of Israel if only it hadn't been for them. He would have made it. Right? We are standing here as Moses is addressing the people for the final few times. We are on the eastern bank of the Jordan River. They are about to cross over, and he is about to die. He is looking at the prize that he has worked for these people for 40 years, and he will not be able to enjoy it, but they will. Can you sense the bitterness that he is feeling? Now, why is it that Moses is not allowed to go into the land of Israel? His error with the rock. I'm going to leave it a little bit more ambiguous because our commentators go through a huge list of the potential problems with the rock. But let me give you the basic story of the rock, and then you'll see that however it was, that was the exact moment that God said, we can definitely isolate the causes. So Moses' sister Miriam had passed away. And according to tradition, there had been a well that had followed us throughout the wilderness that was there in her honor. When she passed away, the well was gone. While the people and Moses are still mourning, they rightly bring up the question, what are we going to drink? We're going to die. We've got no water. And Moses? Well, Moses behaves rather harshly, abruptly, insultingly, rashly. Take your pick of adverb. He calls them rebels and says, fine, we'll smack this rock as God has commanded, and lo and behold, water comes out. And God says, you have failed to sanctify me in the eyes of the people. You will not cross in front of them into the land of Israel. If they hadn't picked that moment while he is in grief and mourning, if they hadn't riled him up again, just as they had been doing for 40 years, if they hadn't pushed him one step too far, that would make him behave rashly and violently and insultingly towards the nation, he would have been home clear. It was just a few more days, and they would have been in the land of Israel. It wasn't a long walk. Is he right to blame them? Is he right that if they had just been a little different, that he would have been able to have fulfilled his dream of leading them into the land? Is that a legitimate complaint of his? I would like to argue that it is not. It is a very human complaint. It is a very natural complaint. We all succumb to this very same complaint over and over again, where we regret the way we behaved in response to someone else's behavior. We regret that we did something that they made us do, that they made us behave that way because they pushed us just a little too far. And just as it is in our own life, that is not a legitimate excuse for Moses either. Because take the alternatives, as I love to do, the hypotheticals, the counterfactuals. Let's imagine the people had said, oh, you know what, Moses is grieving, God's been taking care of us, water will come eventually, we'll be okay. Let's imagine that the people, despite all of their previous behavior, had just been a little more patient and a little bit easier to deal with at that particular moment. Then, no striking of the rock, no rashness, no insulting behavior by Moses, and lo and behold, he sails in across the Jordan at the head of the people. But guess what? Eventually, there will be a crisis. Eventually, there will be a problem, because what the people did was very typical. And can you imagine the difficulty that would happen were it to happen while the people are in the midst of settling the land of Israel, while they are surrounded by enemies, besieging a city or being besieged in return, and Moses snaps at that moment? Can you imagine the dissolution that would happen within the nation should Moses snap in a way that creates a civil war? that creates a separation of the tribes, a loosening of the confederation, consigning us to the oblivion of history. Moses was a ticking time bomb. Moses had a tool set that allowed him to handle the people for 40 years, but it was not a tool set that was going to allow him to handle them in the future. And it was inevitable that there would be something that would sour the relationship between him and them. Good that it was something as small as this. Good that it was something that was so easily fixed and overcome as this. Good that Moses was given, in many ways, a faith-saving way to retire, rather than to continue to lead until catastrophe. It's hard to take responsibility for our behavior when someone else has provoked us. But we have to recognize that the behavior that we committed is our responsibility. Provocation or not, it was still within us to behave in that manner. And if it was within us to behave in that manner, then we have to own the repercussions and take responsibility for the consequences of our behavior. We can still spread the blame around and say that someone else is also responsible for their behavior, their provocation, not to excuse them at all. But we have to make sure that we don't excuse ourselves either. Moses failed to recognize that he had reached the end of his ability to lead. He failed to recognize that the option was there for him to have stepped down earlier, to hand over the reins of the nation to Joshua, and to simply become a regular member of the congregation, of the Kahal, of the people of Israel, and go in with them, but not in front of them, to be there just among the people. But Moses was not prepared to make that shift. He was not capable of making that shift. As such, an incident like this was inevitable. It is good that it happened when it did. It is good that it was recognized, and it is good that God gently, and then eventually bluntly, has to inform Moses that no, really, this has come and gone. And you are blessed for the service you have rendered to the nation. But now the proper thing is to step aside. Now your time is past. Take responsibility for your actions. Recognize that it is a milestone within the relationship of you and the people. Allow yourself to be replaced. Allow yourself to have that last moment of grace, of goodness, of nobility in front of the nation. And indeed, Moses rises to the occasion. The entire book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, is essentially Moses' final farewell address to the nation. And while he may sneak in a few recriminations here or there throughout, especially Devarim, and while he may still clearly be wringing his hands with worry about the future of the nation, you can also hear his relief, and you can hear his optimism that the people will make it, that they will be able to survive without him, and that it is time for him to rest. Shabbat Shalom.